Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Secret Origins of Mint Condition. I am one of your hosts, James, and with me is Joe.
Good day, folks.
And Chris.
Hi there.
And if you have been listening to this show for the time from the beginning till now, then you would know that Chris has especially shown his love for The Expanse.
I've only mentioned it maybe once. That's maybe once.
Like I've only mentioned The Flash by Jeremy Adams.
Hey, we had a minute there where you hadn't, so I'm glad you brought that up, Joe.
Yes, we always love a good callback. So in light of that, Chris's love for it, and Joe and I recently started diving into it because of Chris's recommendation and because it came up. It's come up a lot in the course of the show, but especially a lot when we did What is the Science Fiction episode a few episodes back. We have a lot of questions for Chris, so we are going to dedicate episodes to going over The Expanse one season at a time. I'm sure anyone who's listening to this understands why, because it's really, to use the pun, it's expansive. So, and it's a lot to keep track of, and I think to do one episode or one long episode of the entire series doesn't do it justice, and probably Joe and I wouldn't be able to keep it all in our head. So with Chris being our guide, we are going to dive into season 1 of The Expanse. So if you haven't,
me as your guide, we're all going to die, but this is our final record going out to the galaxy. So I'm glad at least our journey and our demise will be of record.
Yes, we're going to jump in, and if you have not seen The Expanse, this is a spoiler episode, so stop and watch the first season is what I would recommend for starters. So Chris is here to help answer any questions. Joe, I guess why don't I, since Chris has agreed to answer our questions and then kind of jump in when we need and share his love with it, why don't we start with you? What was your overall impression of the first season of The Expanse?
A tremendous amount of world building, something I've never seen in a sci-fi series before. It surpasses even Babylon 5, which did tons of world building at the beginning. I was incredibly impressed by the amount of world building. Also incredibly lost at times, but still I was able to catch up, and that's some of my questions will be coming from that. To me, it's a sci-fi political social commentary drama set in the I guess, what is it, Chris, the 24th century? Is that correct?
Honestly, you're probably right. It's funny. I've really just thought about it as the future. So you're probably right.
and what I took away from
I'm clearly off to a good start in answering questions. So this feels good.
I'm sorry. What I took away from the first season, it's by no means a dystopian future, but a very recognizable one. And I'm reminded of the age-old adage: the more things change, the more they stay the same. And that's what the first season really hit me with, because this show is definitely a mirror to what's going on in the world today, obviously. So all the more reason to dive into it. And I dove into it, and I enjoyed the hell out of it. I really did. So I'm looking forward to the future season.
Good. I'm really glad to hear that.
Yeah, I feel a lot of the same feelings you have, Joe. Lots of world building. Some of it I got, some of it went over my head. So again, I'll be asking Chris for some explanation or if he can give it. And I would say it definitely rings true to a lot of the issues that we currently face and have faced previously. I appreciate the scope of it, that it's sort of the scope of it is like it's a macro scope, but to get to the macro stuff, you're working on the micro with these individual characters and groups and particular locations to build this larger picture. So I like that kind of world building because, again, there's a lot going on, but it helped ground me that we're dealing with certain characters at certain times instead of like zoom out and show us this entire world, all at once. It definitely helped, ground me in it. But I loved it. I'm looking forward to continuing on in season 2. So.
Good. No, I'm glad to hear that. And it's funny you both mentioned the world building. For anybody who doesn't know, the books are written by these two authors, Daniel Abraham and Ty Frank, and they go under the pen name S.A. Corey. They write together, and I can't remember which one of them. Excuse me, but I'm pretty sure it's Daniel Abraham who has worked with George R. R. Martin. The writer of Song of Ice and Fire, Game of Thrones. So a lot of that world building, and they're producers on the show too, by the way, the two of them. So, it's interesting because, that's one of the things I really liked about Game of Thrones at first was the world building. It was hard to keep track of everything, but once I really could, I thought it was rich and it was great. And to reiterate James's pun, in that case, it was expansive.
Mm.
Um, what I really like about the world building in the Expanse here, and I'll be interested to see if you guys whether or not you agree. I think the world building is terrific. I think it's clearly modeled on some of the stuff George R. R. Martin has done. Excuse me. I also I one of the things I feel about their world building is that while it is they do go into details, they do get into some intricacies, which I really appreciate, especially in the books. In the show, it feels a lot more like, okay, we are going to world build. We're going to give these details, and we're going to make sure that we really hit the important stuff so people know what's going on. There's going to be other stuff that's not quite throwaway, but kind of throwaway because you don't need to know about it. It's not central to the plot, but it's in there because this is part of the world. And if you're looking for more richness, great, but we're not going to harp on it Tolkien style in the series because we only have so much time on TV. So yeah, that's what I think about the world building. I'm glad you both enjoyed it and appreciate it, but it is very, very big, and there's a lot to remember. And I think it's got to be a tough balance between, hey, let's make sure we create a rich and vibrant world. Let's not give them so many details that they have to hold on to put all the pieces together that they can't enjoy this without a guide.
That's great. Maybe I should jump into my questions since we're talking about world building, Chris, and just to give me like
Sure.
a sense of space and where all the different characters are. So the important locations, we got Earth, Mars, and the Belt. Am I missing one? Like where, I guess geographically wise, in my head of trying to figure out where everyone is in the first season. Maybe you can give me like a synopsis of that to help me a little bit more.
Sure. Well, so Earth is where we originated. It's our history up till now, right? And that's important because it is the basis for everything. I think they mentioned it in like a prologue, and they kind of mention it offhand, but it's covered more in the books that there's this distrust because there are people who went to Mars with the dream of terraforming Mars.
Mm.
And for anybody who doesn't know that term, basically it's to make Mars a livable planet, right? So that it's
Mhm.
got atmosphere and people can live there, just like they do on Earth. So there was a war because there were precious resources on Mars that Earth wanted, and it. So this is very much a story about colonialism, right?
Mhm.
And Mars fought back. Their technology was superior, but of course Earth had all the resources, and ultimately they ended up fighting to an uneasy truce because Mars needed Earth, and Earth wanted Mars, and needed the resources there, and also just frankly couldn't take Mars back. So at that point, Mars becomes its own planet, its own basically. Earth is a nation, under the UN, and then you've got Mars, which is its own sort of nation, its own entity, its own being, and then you've got the belt. And the belt is, they call it the belt, but in reality, it's basically anything. The belt is considered anything that isn't Earth, Mars, or the Moon, which is referred to as Luna.
Oh, okay,
So
that makes a lot more sense to me now.
yeah, there are a lot of like little space stations for people traveling through space, for spaceships, docks, stuff like that. But also a lot of the asteroids are being mined for minerals and such, right? So there are riches out there, but also things that Earthers and Martians both need. And of almost more import to the Martians are asteroids of ice. Okay,
Right.
ice in space that gets turned into water, and there's a lot of we find out that our to be heroes are on an ice harvester. That's what they're harvesting is ice, and that most of that goes to Mars, which is of course water for Mars, and that's part of where the unrest comes from, which is, oh, that water should have gone to the belt, but instead it goes for Mars, and there's more colonialism happening, right? So originally you have Earth and Mars as a colonial system. And then, Mars gets out from underneath Earth's neck. So what happens? Well, the belt ends up underneath. Sorry, I said neck, but I meant boot. They get their neck out from underneath Earth's boot. But of course, now Earth and Mars collectively have their boots on the neck of the belt. And so that's that. I don't know if that helps answer your questions.
No, it does, because I kind of like there were in a few different locations, I feel like, on the belt, and I was kind of like, what is, like, I didn't understand the belt is everything in between. Like,
Yes.
that was kind
Yes.
of confusing to me. I was like, is this a different location? Is this the same location in the belt? Like,
Sure.
it
No,
was a
so
little disorientating to me.
no, absolutely. Yeah, the belt, and that's sort of the derogatory sort of thing in there too, right? Is that all belters are the same when they're clearly not. The belt is just one big resource when it's a place that people live, and they mention it in the show that people born in space are unable to live on Earth. That we find out in the books and later on in the show that's not entirely true, but there's like a grueling drug regimen not everybody takes to it.
Mm.
And then even then it's still a struggle for belters to live with regular gravity because they were born and live in space. So there are a lot of belters who are never going to be able to put their feet on the ground without frankly dying.
Right.
So that's the belt. It's all those different locations are considered to be part of the belt, but this is also where some of the political friction comes in, right? Because as far as belters are concerned, this is all ours, right? We run all of this. This is all ours. And of course, Earth and Mars go, no, this is our station. That's our station. This is our property. You just run it because we are willing to suffer you being there, kind of thing. And so that leads to a lot of the political drama.
Right.
No, that's great. Thank that's a big help. Joe, I don't want to monopolize all
No,
my
that's
question. So Joe, why don't we turn it over to you to ask some questions?
Well,
Or
yeah.
ask a
Well,
question.
Chris, am I right in assuming that Sirius is the nexus for all this? Correct? Would
Um,
that be a fair statement?
so
Is
it's a nexus. It's a
a
nexus
nexus?
for the action
Right. Yeah.
in the first movie, but it is not like the nexus because
Okay.
there are other stations. There are other stations like Ceres Station, including like for example Anderson Station.
Yes. Yes. Okay.
Okay.
That was mentioned. Okay. Now, another. Well, to get back to Mars for a second. How far along was Mars terraformed? Did they get that far? Are they living in
No, no.
habitable
So there,
domes and things like that?
no. So it's one of those things that and let's see if I can remember his name. But he's one of the he's sort of the Martian lieutenant or captain. Not a captain, but like a lieutenant underneath the Gene Yoon's character, the captain of
The Doninger?
the Donager. Yes.
Okay.
So the guy who sort of like gets them out, right? And
Lopez.
keeps them-
Lopez.
thank you, Lopez. Yes.
I got my notes.
Yeah. No. That's great. I'm glad you mentioned it. So that's what Lopez says. He talks about living under a dome
Right.
and not
Okay,
really,
I forgot that.
it would have really been unbelievable, just before he, again, spoilers. I know we were already there, but just a quick reminder, spoilers.
Yeah.
Just before he croaks, he talks about how unbelievable it would have been to see an ocean on Mars.
I remember
So,
that now. Yes.
yeah, so they're still living under domes there. The fact is, this is like generations upon generations upon generations in the making. So they're sort of nowhere. They're nowhere near yet. Is the short answer. The short answer is they're nowhere near terraforming Mars. It gives them a unity of vision, a unity of purpose, and that's why their technology is so advanced. Is because it has to be in order to realize the dream. But they're not there near enough yet. They're all still living under domes.
Okay. And Chris, the OPA, the Outer Planet Alliance,
Oh, good, Joe. I'm glad you asked about
Yep.
that.
is that made up of only of belters, or are there any other societies or civilizations that we're going to learn about?
It's belters. It's belters.
Belters. Okay.
Yeah, what we're and this is one of the things that we'll start getting into later, but it's where guys like where people such as excuse me, not Dawes, not Anderson Dawes, Fred Johnson, where people like Fred Johnson fit in,
Oh, I have questions about him.
because Fred Johnson is obviously running a belter station, but was also clearly an Earth colonel with the UN, right, from Earth. He's an Earther,
Mhm.
but he is sort of out there with the belt, but not OPA, but maybe has OPA connections. Like, so it starts getting a little more complicated. But there are definitely different factions within the OPA too. There are some more extremists and actual terrorists versus those people who just want to have a voice. So the OPA is we do continue to get into it in the show. I think it's much more fleshed out in the books in terms of being sort of like richer in terms of like factions, and there are factions in the OPA. Like they mentioned Golden Bough in the first season, and there are some other big sort of factions. Think of it almost like families,
Okay.
with the mafia. Almost. Not quite like
Oh,
that, but kind of.
interesting. Look, interesting take. I like that. Okay.
Yeah, that helps a lot too. I'm glad you brought that up, Joe, because understanding like the OPA, because OPA obviously is a big deal in the
Hmm.
show in terms of like that's where Joe Miller goes to find Julie
Right.
eventually. So I was kind of just trying to understand like what is this group? It's I guess it's something that both Mars and Earth have issues with.
Right. Well, because they're not really recognized is the thing.
Hmm.
That's why they're often referred to as terrorists. This is why it's sort of like assumed that all belters could be part of OPA, and so all belters are the enemy as far as, Earthers and Martians are concerned. Um, so it's very much because they can't have a home base of operations, right? And because they are reliant on Earth and Mars for technology and water and air and all these resources, right? So think of the OPA as some people want this to be sort of like the legitimate government of Belters, and then others are like, no, we have to take action. Like we're tired of living underneath, their heel. They should respect us as a nation of our own. So they're very much think of them as gorillas. You know,
Hmm.
Okay,
um,
that makes a lot more sense to me.
I,
That it's one group but also divided amongst themselves.
right,
That
right,
makes
which
a lot
comes
more sense.
into play a lot in later seasons for sure.
So who's the and I forget the actor and the character's name, but who is the guy that beats up Joe with the head OPA guy?
Yeah, so
That
that's Anderson
it's
Dawes.
indoors.
okay,
Okay.
thank
Gotcha.
you.
Right.
Sorry,
Yeah, Anderson Dawes, and he definitely is OPA. And the actor is, oh gosh, what's your name? Because he was also
he's in Foundation also. He's
he's in the
Oh, really?
Sherlock Holmes movies with Jared Harris. That's his name.
yes, Jared Harris. I couldn't forget
He's
Jared
also in the
Harris.
Sherlock Holmes movies as or at least the second one, Game of Shadows,
Oh, is
as
Moriarty? Oh,
Moriarty. There we
yes.
go.
That I can't believe I forgot his name. Okay, but he's like, is he head of like, is he head of like, supposedly, is he head of the main faction or is he head of like the separate factions?
So
Like,
there is no main faction, to be clear.
okay,
There is no main faction in the OPA. The
okay,
OPA sort of shifts and ripples and changes, but he is a very very big name in the OPA. So he's got a lot of influence, a lot of pull.
Hmm.
okay,
He's also they did a nice job with him in the TV series because he's a more interesting character. In the books, he exists, but he's always sort of he always has his own agenda, but they never really quite flesh him out into a three dimensional character. He's almost in the books, he's almost more of a kind of a foil for Fred Johnson.
okay.
Interesting. Yeah,
Interesting.
couple of questions about Mr. Dawes.
Yeah,
Well, first of all, that's interesting to say that he's because he is a very complex character. I got a kind of almost a Garrick type of feeling from him from Deep Space Nine. That
sure, sure, yeah,
yeah, he's playing both sides of the fence. I think I don't know if that's going to pan out, but that's the feeling I got from Dawes. Oh, now also the way he speaks, and this leads to a bigger question: is there a separate Belter language or dialect, something along the lines of what Whedon before he went nuts was doing with language in
yeah,
Firefly?
yeah. So it's referred to as Belter Creole, basically.
There you go. Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah, exactly. So the idea being that they do have their own culture, right?
Mhm.
And also because for anybody who doesn't know, Creole is you know what am I thinking of? Especially it comes from like the Caribbean. We hear it a lot with regards to like NOLA, New Orleans, right?
Mhm.
But people of mixed white, I mean specifically European and black descent.
Right.
And that's sort of the same thing with Belters, right? Because they're a mix. You
Yeah.
have people who once lived on Mars and people who once lived on Earth, but now that they've been in the belt for so long, they have their own culture, right? And we see that in like the hand gestures. The I can't remember the name of the prostitute, but the prostitute who's teaching Havelock, how to
Oh,
say
Oh,
keep
right.
calm, that sort of
right.
thing, right? He's learning how to communicate in Belter Creole. He'll never be taken for a Belter, but it's that idea of if I learn enough about the culture, they will learn I am an ally, right? And not just some earther. So when you talk about Creole, you're talking about a couple of languages being thrown together and
Mhm.
and creating really it starts as a hybrid, but it becomes its own language. So they speak English just fine. Their grammar is almost like Ebonics, in that
Mm.
it's often by Earthers and Martians both, it is perceived as this means you are less intelligent than, you are less cultured than, and it really reflects, for example, the American attitude toward Ebonics, right? Which is, no, you got to speak properly, and this is what we teach in schools. You can't write like that. You can't talk like that, and it's not white people who speak in Ebonics, right? So it is an attempt to, or like when you're talking with Spanish and broken English, right? It's a perfectly valid way of communicating, but inevitably it's no, 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 you can't speak like that because that is how the uneducated speak, right? So it's another way that the majority, the ethnic majority, put the ethnic minority like in their place and keep them from advancing. And so that's what we see in the Expanse with like Belter Creole. It's just one more instance of, okay, we see this is an ethnic minority, even though their numbers are growing, even though they're essential to the economy and all this stuff. They're considered to be uneducated, less than, that sort of thing.
That's very,
Thanks for the
excellent.
answer, Chris. Thank you.
So just to kind of now kind of center a little bit, from my questions on the characters we're following through the story. So Joe Miller, I guess police, I guess, is privatized, and he's a privatized detective within that police force. Is that correct?
Kind of. I think of it more like private security that runs things on the station, basically. Like Star Helix is, but
Mm.
Star Helix is and contractually, like they are contracted from Earth, so it's mostly Earthers with Star Helix. So they say police, but it's kind of like, think I don't want to quite say sheriff, but like sheriff for hire. It's not quite private security, but it's kind of like that because they are contracted out there.
I see.
So
Okay.
yeah,
I see.
so I don't know if that's like the best explanation,
Yeah, I
but
think that
like
fits. Yeah.
it's I think at some point during the show they say, and I might be remembering this incorrectly, but I think Havelock is the one who says it to Miller. What is it that you say? There is no law. There's just the police, and that's
Mm.
kind of what we're looking at here.
I see. And then among that, he's sort of in it for himself, at least when we meet him before he takes on Julie's case, right? I mean,
Right,
he's
right. And even that we're not entirely sure of his motives, right? Because he's so fixated on it that it's like it's not a matter of whether he's doing right or not. It's a lot of just trying to unravel this mystery that is sort of tantalizing, right? And we get more into it in his character is slightly different in the books. He's a little more tortured by who he is and his inability to connect with people, whereas the Miller in the TV show clearly like there's clearly a lack of ability to connect with people, but he doesn't necessarily seem as tortured by it in the first season.
well, I guess my I feel like in the first season, and maybe I'm wrong, just by it feels like we are the focus of it was Joe's story, Jim's story. Like we got a lot on those characters,
Hmm.
and we got a little background on Alex, but then Naomi and Amos, I don't think we really get much of a background on them at
No,
all. And
no, we don't.
Christian, we get some of her background, but like it seems like Jim and Joe are the main guys, and then everyone else is there, but we're not diving into their background at least now. I don't know if we ever do.
So
I'm assuming we do over the course of.
we learn more
Okay.
about everybody. Here's the thing: is that, and I'm going to get to you in a second, Joe, because I see
Yeah,
your hand is
Yeah.
up.
Sorry, Joe.
that's okay.
So Avasarala actually shouldn't be. She's not in the first book. She doesn't show up till the second book.
Oh,
She was an addition to the first season. I think it's probably so that we have an anchor on Earth to see what's happening on Earth. Because in the book, we're really getting more from Holden's perspective. So we learn more about like Alex and Amos and Naomi from his perspective, but we kind of can't do that in the TV show, right? Because we don't have that inner monologue that we can write in the books. So we will learn more about them. But really, this story is actually, and this is also why they started with her, because she doesn't get that in the book. But the prologue to the first season is Julie's, right?
Right.
Hmm.
So that's really sort of the story that we're going with here. That transcends the first season into the second season, as I'm sure anybody who saw the first season, I'm sure you guys could tell, like, oh no, there's more coming. Um,
It
right?
better be.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where I think that's part of the reason they set it up with a Julie prologue, even though that didn't happen in the books, was because this actually ends up centering around Julie and what happened to her, which is how we learn about. I can't remember. Have they named it by the end of the first season? What happened to her?
I think they call it. What do they call it?
The protomolecule.
Yes, they call it.
Proto-molecule, yes.
Okay, I
Yes,
couldn't
yes, they
remember
do.
whether or not they
And
named it by
we
the end
see
of the
how
first
that's
season.
tied back to her father, right? Yeah.
Right, right. Okay. I was pretty sure they named it, but yeah, so the protomolecule, that's really what this ends up being about. And so it just so happens, I think that the three actors that were cast first, I believe this is accurate, and double check me, but I believe the three actors that were cast before anybody else was cast were Thomas Jane as Miller, Stephen Strait as Holden, and Shohreh Aghdashloo as Christian Avasarala,
Hmm.
which, by the way, I adore her. She only gets
Oh,
better. She's so good in the first season. She only gets better, I
she's one of
promise.
my two favorite characters.
She's brilliant.
I got some
Um,
like Jakar vibes from her or
oh,
something.
she's so good. And so those three actors were cast first, and so I think there was always the notion when they were creating the show that they were going to build around those actors, and so I think that's what happened, and it becomes less obvious as we move forward. But I mean, Holden is always a main character.
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
All right.
So, so Joe, you have. I don't want to, because I
Not.
know you got other questions. I don't want to.
I
I want to.
just wanted to say I get a vibe from, because I can't help but, all these years of watching countless movies and TV, films and whatnot. I get a Sam Spade vibe from Joe Miller. He gets beat up a lot. He gets hit in the head a lot. So and I think
Yeah,
he's driven by the fact that he's an investigator at heart. And I think that's part of what drives him, because that's what drove, obviously, Sam Spade. So I am looking forward to see his further story arc. Um, Now, what was my other question?
and really
Uh,
quickly, I'm gonna come back to you, but really quickly, just so I apologize. I know I kind of butchered her name, but Shohreh Aghdashloo, who's really just a lovely, lovely person in general. She once gave me a little reaction Facebook shout out thing,
oh,
which
that's
I thought was
nice.
super cool of her.
Oh,
But
cool.
she's this really lovely actress who's done a lot of good work. So go check out some of the other work she's done. But anyway, so Joe, go on. I think you're right about the Sam Spade thing. I think he's very much the sort of the hard boiled detective who gets himself, the private dick who gets himself into all sorts
Yeah,
of trouble. And it ends up in over his head. So I mean, I think that was intentional. I think you're spot on. Down to, I like, because it's down to the hat, right?
yeah,
Even
the
the
hat.
hat makes him look like that. But when he's
Right.
asked about it, like, why do you wear a hat? He says, to keep the rain off my head,
The hide the
right?
data
Which
cube.
of course makes no sense out in space. So
Yeah,
I like that they sort of acknowledge that it's ridiculous, but they're also going to go, yeah, he's the private dick. What are you going to do about it?
yeah, but that hat comes in very handy when he's getting beat up by Dawes'
Yes,
men, because that's where the data cube is hidden
yes, it
under the
does.
hat. So I mean,
Hmm.
it's the call back to the hat. The hat is there for. We're going back to Chekhov's gun again.
Right.
But it's good writing. It's fantastic writing. Now I have some questions about Fred Johnson. I think he's the
Sure.
okay. Now, is he the owner or the of Tycho Station? And if
He's just the
he
guy who runs it.
he's the guy who runs it. Now, if he's the butcher of what is he called now? The butcher
Anderson
of
State, the butcher of Anderson Station.
number one. Why was he? Did he kill all those people? I presume they were miners, right?
Yeah.
He kills all those people. He has his men kill them. Um, Again, what was he just following orders? Is he the 24th century version of Lieutenant Calley? Is that why he did
So,
that?
so it turns out that he was misled.
He was misled. Ah,
Yeah. It turns out that he was fed some false information because ultimately the UN didn't want to have to deal with everything that was going on Anderson Station, and it wasn't everybody. It's not like the entire government was involved, but basically he was fed some false information, and especially including the idea that these people are terrorists, which we see in the show they're not. And there is a book that I think is called Anderson Station, but sort of covers some of that. That's separate from the Expanse series of books. But basically, it's that he feels guilty later on. He should have. It's something that he should have prevented, is what he feels like.
I got that
Um,
vibe. Obviously, when he puts out that
yeah,
message at the end of the last episode, yeah, he's blaming Earth for the building of the stealth weaponry, right?
right.
Okay,
He was ordered to retake the station by force,
okay,
and though they surrendered, he did that. So it's definitely like a little bit gray, but he's definitely part of he's part of that. What's the way to put it? I mean, it's definitely partially his fault, kind of thing. Okay. Um, and I'm trying to remember exactly the difference between. Yeah. Okay. So this is really what it came to. is that, and this is why it's different between the show and the book. In the book, when they were trying to, when the Belters were trying to negotiate, their communiques to Earth were blocked by the UN. Okay, Fred didn't know this, so all he was told was, his job was to fire orders and we'll wipe you out. He did not know that there were attempts at negotiation from the Belters because he was not informed of that.
Yeah, because
So,
they were going to surrender before he fired.
right.
They didn't want to. But
In fact, they
agreed to
do.
surrender.
Not that they were going to. They do,
They
right?
do surrender, right? It's
Yeah.
correct.
So it's that Fred Johnson didn't have full information. He ends up being used as a tool. It was assumed that he would serve well as a tool, because what are you going to do when you know the truth? Are you going to out yourself as a butcher? And then of course he did. He stepped away from the UN, and now he advocates for the belt and works for the belt. So yeah, that's what happened with Anderson Station. I don't know if that answered your
No,
question.
that answers my question. So now Tycho Station, which he oversees, where are they aligned in this whole Earth Mars OPA?
I mean, there are elements of the OPA, but it's sort of like, there are elements of the OPA there, but the OPA is not recognized by Earth or Mars.
Right.
So this is just a station that does work. They sort of keep their head down, is the idea. And it's populated by Belters. I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, that does make sense. And he's building that ship for the Mormons, right? The Nauvoo.
The Nauvoo, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. Okay. This is.
But he's a very influential character, Fred Johnson. I mean,
I'm sorry, but he's what?
He's a very influential character.
Oh,
Fred
yes.
Johnson. He has political ties, or just
he has a lot of clout. And there's obviously
he can scare you.
There's big legend around him.
I'm doing it again. I'm thinking back to another show. Tycho Station is kind of like Terek Nor before it becomes, or Deep Space Nine in that sense. How it's on the frontier, right next to the wormhole, and how it's, even though it's run by the Federation, there are other people, other civilizations. Obviously, the Cardassians and the Bajorans, who have influence on it and over it. So it's this is, I can see how this is going to be very expanded upon. That's what the show.
Yeah, and Tycho does have a place, but this is one thing I really, really like about the series is that, you had asked, okay, where's the action happening? Where's the nexus? And the thing is, this is going to, the universe is going to expand. This is, yes. I think, one of the reasons that I mentioned in other episodes that it took me 3 views to try and get through the first episode. I kept falling asleep, and I was willing to write the series off, because I was like, okay, it's more politics in space. It gets so much bigger than that that it's worth sticking around for. To me, so right now these are sort of like central and important, and they'll be important later. It's just that the universe gets a lot bigger around them.
Well, the name of the show, The Expanse, is both a literal term and a metaphorical term, obviously.
Right, and some foreshadowing too. Yeah.
Yeah, and foreshadowing. Okay. Well, yeah, I got a few questions about that too. What the hell is that thing on the reactor in the Anubis? Right.
Yes.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, I got a lot. Well, I mean, I guess they don't answer those questions, because that was one of my.
Some of it. Sorry, go ahead, James.
No, I was gonna say that's some of my additional questions, and kind of going back, because I didn't want to interrupt Joe, because I was kind of monopolizing the questions originally. But I was thinking, like, Julie seemed to me originally like just the MacGuffin, but clearly there's more to her than just being a MacGuffin in the show. But I guess also in terms of what her, interaction with her relationship with her father mixed with the proto molecule, I guess that gets drawn out as we move into season 2, right?
Yes. Yes, it does.
Yes.
There's gonna be a lot that they really, really dig into here, because there is so much more to learn about the protomolecule. There is more to learn about Julie Mao as well as Jules Pierre Mao. Like I said, a lot of that gets a lot more questions are answered. The questions that you guys are posing right now, they're answered in the first book, but there wasn't room in the first season. So the first book sort of spreads out to season 1 and like halfway through season 2, maybe towards the end of season 2. I can't remember offhand. And then they start matching up the book with the season more closely, because they have a lot of groundwork they want to lay. And then after that, they'll start sort of like taking some characters from the books and fusing them together into a character, so that we don't need to follow 2 characters. We can just follow one, and they can narratively, they can have the same effect. And it's one of the things that I think they did beautifully is, there's some stuff we lose from the books, but the show is its own beast, and it's really, really well done. So even if it's not like textually totally faithful to the books. In feel and intention, it's very faithful to the book. So I think it's a great translation.
Hmm. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I think now that you've helped and answered a lot of these questions, the season makes a lot more sense to me now.
Well, yeah, it does to me, but
Good.
I still have a few more questions.
No,
Yeah, no,
keep
by all
going, Joe.
means, by all means, bring them on.
Let's see. Well, I don't. I guess I should really shouldn't ask this question because then I don't want to spoil it. But is Christian? She's not going to disappoint me, is she?
No,
Okay, all right, that's good. I just want to know. I just want to know that because
she's
I love her so much, and I don't want her to, I don't want her to do a heel turn and turn out to be like that creep Ehrenreich. I mean, I can't stand him.
yeah, no, she will. She will. There are going to be times where she sort of disappoints you because she's human, and I think she's written all the characters written beautifully that way. That like they make mistakes, and they even with the right information, sometimes they still do the wrong thing. But Christian has a really lovely evolution over the course of her tenure in the series.
She has the courage of her convictions. You can see that,
Yes.
and that's
Yeah. And that gets tested even more
I'm sure.
later
I
in the
hope it
series.
does. Yeah.
And
They're good
her
stories.
the actor is just again, she's just fantastic. Okay. Shora is she's just a terrific, outstanding actor who brings a lot of fire, but also a lot of vulnerability to the role. And she just gets more and more opportunities to really show off. So there are, I know, one of the biggest changes between the first book and the first season of The Expanse is the introduction of Avasarala, because she doesn't come in until the second book. Um, but it really does a good job of setting the tone and centralizing her, making her an anchor character. She's just terrific. So no, I don't think she will disappoint you. She
Okay.
over the course of 6 seasons, she remains one of my absolute favorite characters.
Well, one of my favorite scenes from the first season is her traipsing through the Montana snow to
Yeah,
go talk to Holder's, well, one of Holder's moms
Right.
apparently, and that's a beautiful scene between those two actresses. It's just and you really get to see the core of her character there. This is a woman again who has the courage of her convictions, but she's also a compassionate and passionate woman at the same time person. This period, and she's. I really fell in love with her at that point. I really did. So I'm looking forward to seeing her story arc unfold.
yeah,
And
no, she's great. I agree. I agree with you, Joe, 100%.
yeah,
Oh,
no,
another
it's
question. Can I? Oh, sorry.
no. I was
Somebody
just gonna say
question?
it. I think it is. I think it's a great scene. I really enjoy it. I also like that it's the prelude is her dressing down the officer who's telling her not to go.
Yes, yes, yes,
Right.
yes.
Um, it's the way that she talks is so forceful. It's so strong, but but it's also authentic. Like this is something that I think is done. It's done well in the books. It's done even better in the show, where you have these women who are written just wonderfully.
Well, she has a very resonant, deep voice, which is commanding and soothing at the same time.
Yeah,
So, yeah, she's a spectacular character and obviously a very good actress. Very good
yeah,
actor.
yeah.
Yeah. Um,
I have a follow up question. Well, not even follow up. Another question. May I?
sure. Yeah.
Okay. Ice holders. Holden and his crew, the survivors of the
Sure.
Canterbury.
Yeah.
It's intimated that people that haul ice are at the bottom rung of space travelers. Is that correct? And
I mean,
because of their past dealings and things like that.
it's not quite that they're the bottom rung. It's that they're easily overlooked, and
Okay.
it's all grunt work.
Grunt work. Okay.
Okay.
And they're expendable too, right? We learn about the in the very beginning there, the guy who loses his arm when the ice
Mhm.
breaks, and he wants, they're like, we're gonna get you the gel, we're gonna get you a new arm, and he's like, no, I want, Belter made, I want that, but don't let them screw me out of it, okay? Um, so it's they're not quite the like treated like garbage men, but they're I guess they're kind of on that tier, but they're not the bottom of the barrel. It's just a really good way for them to escape because nobody cares who they are. Nobody cares what they're doing. All that matters is ice, whether it's delivered on time. If it's delivered on time, they get their bonus. If not, then they get chewed out and they get screwed.
They're civil
Um,
servants.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, so that's how that works.
Okay. Cool.
I guess a follow up question, Chris, or maybe just to like kind of go with Joe's,
Sure.
Chris Jen question in terms of disappointment, or not so much disappointment in my case, but just finding out. I mean, I guess we will get more on Amos and Naomi's relationship and
Oh,
background because
yeah.
he's actually a very scary dude.
Yes, he
I feel
is.
Yes.
like
He doesn't. He actually gets more scary. The
okay,
Oh
more
my
you.
God, scary than when he shot Mills' friend in the
Yep.
back. Holy
Yep.
crap!
It's one of those things. What we learn about him, we do learn about his relationship with Naomi, and um, I guess the question is, without giving away like details, how much do you want me to talk about Amos and why he gets scarier?
well,
No,
I just
don't
kind
please
of
don't.
don't. I just
Okay,
wanted
then
to
I
make
won't.
sure. I just want to make sure we kind of like we get to the root of what we're viewing right now is somewhat sociopathic. Like it's
Yes.
his behavior is just like he's like either sociopathic or if Naomi tells him he's like I wouldn't say lapdog, but he's just like okay, like
No,
he may not agree with it, but he'll
you've hit the nail on the head. He's a sociopath, but he's also a sociopath who knows he's a sociopath.
okay.
And
Well, that's
so
kind.
right. Well, and in this case, and there is a thing he says in the first season that really helps unearth a lot more about him than you realize until you've watched enough of the Expanse and then go back and hear him say it and go, "Oh, he summed it up right here." What he says to Naomi is, when you say something, I back you. I back you because you're normally right, but usually I can figure out why you're right. That's
Okay.
what he says. Okay.
Uh,
So that's part of their relationship, and they will explore again. They'll explore more of it later, but that particular quote really tells you a lot more about Amos than you realize until later on when you learn more about him and go, oh, okay, yeah, he gave away a lot of the show right here.
Okay. Yeah, because he's. I mean, I think right now he's like the scariest person on the show.
Oh, he and that sort of doesn't stop, honestly, and in a good way too. I think they do a really good job moving forward of like fleshing out humor and stuff. It's sort of like when at the end of season one there when oh gosh, when Miller and Holden escape from the station, and Miller sees when Miller thinks that the airlock opens, right, the elevator opens, and he thinks he sees Julie Mao, and he says it's beautiful, and then it's Amos standing there who says, "You guys look like shit." It's those moments of humor that they start expanding upon and doing more with, and it's in the books too. So the more you learn about him, I this is how I feel about him. Maybe you won't feel the same way, but I think you will. The more you learn about him, the scarier he gets, and the more you love him, because that's how I feel about him.
Okay. Okay, that's fair. That's good. That's good enough. That answers my
And the
kind of.
actor is, excuse me, the actor Wes Chatham. He's so good. He's so good because the more he plays this character, it's really difficult to play somebody. It's really difficult to play a sociopath because sociopaths tend to be so removed. But there's a difference between being sort of removed and being uninterested. I think it's hard as an actor to do that in a way that does it justice and makes that person a character and like a fully fledged character as opposed to just a caricature. And Wes Chatham is really, really good at exploring that character. But I will also say this: we never fully figure him out. And even though he is a character over 6 seasons and over 9 books has a journey, it's not the type of journey that's written about in other stories because there are parts of it that are not that satisfying because there's only so much growth and it only in so many areas. So again, this show was just perfectly cast. I have literally no complaints at all about the casting. Not one, not even a little bit. But I think he does a brilliant job and brings so much to this character. But it's all in the nuance, and it's sort of like you've heard this about athletes, James. With martial arts,
Mm,
um, the people who make things. It's the people who take hard things and make them look easy, right? And they're working really, really hard, but they make it look easy. That's, I think, what Wes Chatham does with playing Amos. Is he takes something that looks like it should be easy, some flat affect, some like hard glares, looking intimidating and stuff, but there's so much nuance underneath it, and he's working so hard to make it look easy.
got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
What
Yeah.
I want to say about Wes Chatham is he's got that Stephen Amell look to him. He actually looks like the actor Stephen Amell, the guy that played Arrow for 8 years. And there was a sociopath for 8 years, killing people left and right. So a very interesting character, and I want to learn so much more about Naomi because obviously
Oh, you will.
she's got a background. It doesn't seem like everybody trusts her, and wherever she goes, it seems like it seems like her reputation precedes her, and so it's interesting to see where her story arc is going to go.
Her story arc is fantastic. The actor Dominique Tipper, she's just tremendous. She's tremendous, and she really, again, she and Wes really get to show you their range, and so does Cass Anvar. They all get to really. By the time you start really getting through season 2 and into season 3, in my opinion, the weakest member of the cast ends up sort of being Steven Strait,
Hmm.
and that's, in my opinion, that's saying something because I think he does really fine work in this show.
Hmm. You know,
Interesting.
they're all great characters so far,
Yeah,
we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg with all of them. So I'm sure there's so much more we're going to learn
yeah. Oh,
and be
there's a
surprised and
ton.
be
And
surprised by.
really quick note, I will say this for anybody listening to this, if you don't know, Cass Anvar he was outed as basically as unfortunately he's such a fine actor, but he was outed as a sexual predator.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh,
unfortunately, in fact, there was an independent firm that was hired to investigate over 30 allegations of sexual harassment and assaults made, against Anver. And we found this out just going into coming out of season 5, I think it was. So I just want to say to the audience that like there are going to be a number of times during when we're talking about the Expanse that I will say that Cass Anvar is perfectly cast for Alex Kamal, that he is
mhm.
a fantastic actor, that he brings incredible depth to the show and really rounds out the cast. And all of those things are still true. I stand by every single one of those things without losing sight of the fact that he is a sexual predator and that I think the show deals with it appropriately. Later on, and you
Sure.
guys will see what I mean. Um, I will say this: the show is sort of unaffected by what happened with him personally, which I appreciate. I think it was masterfully navigated. So I want to say that even though I'm going to praise him as a tremendous actor and an incredible talent, I do not say that to undermine the harm that he has done to other people, and I don't say that to write off the harm he's done to other people. But when we're talking in the context of the show, I love the character of Alex. Cass Anvar, the actor, was just an absolutely inspired choice for Alex and brings so much life to him. And I think he really brings so much to the show, especially as we learn more about Alex. So that's a thing I do want to put out there is forgive me, but there are going to be times I'm going to talk about what a very talented artist he is. And it's important we acknowledge there is that duality of no, he could be a person who has done harm to others, possibly even what you might say like a bad person, but a really talented artist. So
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I
That
appreciate that,
leaps to
Chris.
mind. Roman Polanski leaps to mind.
yeah,
Right?
Roman
Oh yeah,
Polanski, Michael
yep,
Jackson, there are all sorts of
Yeah,
artists
exactly.
that we need to
yeah.
be able to. We run into it with athletes too. So, but it's worth
Yes, very much.
mentioning that Cass Anvar is an actor. I'm going to mention this a lot because he makes Alex so endearing, and the more you guys learn about him, the more you're going to love that character.
Yeah, I mean, Alex is one of my. Well, I think they're all my favorite characters because they're all so interesting,
Yes,
and it's just
yeah,
what
it's
a
so great.
wonderful first season for a show that I just enjoyed the hell out of it.
I mean, Chris, this might be a hard question for us to like wrap up on, but I mean, based upon what the questions Joe and I've had and offline conversations you have, do you think we have a good grasp of the first season of the show? Like, is there anything we missed, or maybe you think that we need more explanation on before we move into season 2?
No, I mean, I don't think so. These are people who are sort of thrown together, and on the Tachi, which later becomes the Rocinante, the Rossi,
Right.
and that there's, excuse me, and that the proto molecule is driving a lot of the action in the first season. So yeah, and like you said, Joe, like what the hell is happening on the Anubis?
Yeah,
We're gonna find out, and it's gonna be one of those. It's going to be one of those events that shapes the entirety of the series and the future. And this is sort of what I mean when I talk about how the losses that we suffer in the Expanse when people die, when things happen, there is no going back. There's only going forward. I think they do a really nice job of they don't write themselves into the writers don't write themselves into any corner they can't get out of. And the second season really explores what the protomolecule is, what it means, not just for Earth or for Mars or the Belt, but for all of humanity. And then it goes back to what you were saying, Joe. The more things change, the more they stay the same.
Mhm.
So I think this is a really, really terrific exploration of. By the time you finish, in my opinion, by the time you finish season 2, you're going to be hooked. You're like really, really hooked into the broader story. But I think you're really going to respect the scale on which they start functioning. And that's something that I think was missing from Game of Thrones, is that the scale was there, but then in my opinion, George R. R. Martin, and I didn't watch the show, I only read the books. George R. R. Martin sort of like lost his grasp on it. The scale was too big. He couldn't figure out how to focus in on what needed to be focused in on. And you can tell the story however you want. It's just that there's a time for macro storytelling, there's a time for micro storytelling, and I feel like George R. R. Martin has difficulty balancing those. So it often feels like, yes, it's a big world, but also it's these same couple of locations that matter. In The Expanse, I think they do a really great job of zooming out when necessary, zooming in when necessary, and there are key locations, but all the time there are new places being woven into this tapestry. So I think you guys have a pretty good handle going from season 1 to season 2, and I think that the more you watch, once you've digested season 1, I think the more you watch, the easier it is to integrate new information.
Well, when I was taking my notes, I'm looking at page 8 of 10 pages, right? And I wrote the word "stop" in gigantic letters in, right? And this is right after the battle in the hotel between Aaron Wright's Black Ops group and Rocinante crew and Miller. When Miller shows up to save their bacon, actually. And I wrote, it's truly an epic feat of writing and direction to get all these disparate characters together at this one place and time. I mean, showrunners, directors, writers. I mean, this is wow. It just blew me away how they just, over the span of 10 episodes, they took all these disparate pieces and just finally brought them together in this one place. And it felt so organic. It didn't look like it was
Yeah.
contrived. And
Yeah.
that's what I took from that first season. This is a very well written, very well acted, very well run show.
It's, to me, is
top-
impressive
top
that they
stuff.
can write, and you're going to find out why in future seasons. But it's impressive to me because they lean into different show and storytelling archetypes. Like there are elements of the Western in here.
Mhm.
There's the detective,
Right.
the noir storytelling. There's sci-fi, obviously, and one of the things that I really dig, and there's the political drama, right? So,
Right.
what I dig about the storytelling, and that I just can't wrap my brain around, is how it is they manage all the politics and the intrigue, the palace intrigue, so well, while also posing a mystery that this detective has to solve,
Mhm.
that we're solving at the same time. And then, like
Mhm.
you said, we end up with these disparate characters in the same place in a way that somehow feels organic. So there's a mystery that needs to be solved, but it feels like this is all, yes, of course they come together,
Yeah.
but I also understand how they come together. So I think the way they managed to write, they managed to weave in these different elements is just really impressive.
We just spent, I don't know how, 15 minutes talking about a science fiction show. We didn't talk about tropes. And that,
No.
I think that is a testament to this show.
Oh, the character, yeah, absolutely, because the
Yeah.
characters they're so well written. There's so much story, there's so much richness that the tropes, they are a part of it, and the story archetypes are a part of it, and clearly inform it. But I mean it when I say that, to me, far and away, The Expanse is the best sci-fi show that I've ever watched, and the books are they're just incredible. I was unintentionally, but this is, I guess, what dadhood does to you, is I almost said they're out of this world, which was just in poor taste. Man, the books are the
That's all
books
right.
are
Low hanging
really,
fruit, right?
it's just incredible. So yeah.
Well, this has been great, Joe. Do you have any more questions?
I just want to thank you, James, for getting me years ago into Babylon 5. And I want to thank you, Chris, for getting me into The Expanse. I feel that after watching the first season of The Expanse, the way I felt when I saw the first season of Babylon 5, I am psyched. I
Oh,
can't wait to
that's
watch the second
terrific.
season.
That is, knowing you, Joe, that is incredibly high praise.
You're welcome, Chris.
Yes,
All
Chris, I
right.
thank you for getting us both into it, and I appreciate you talking about it, or you did great on this episode of giving us all the
Wow,
answers and
yes.
staying within season 1 without like dropping or spoiling
Thanks.
anything
Had to be
coming
tough.
after.
Oof.
So
No, I appreciate it. And actually it's funny because Josh mentioned Josh Bernhard, who's been a guest on the show a bunch of times, and specifically to talk about Star Wars. He has said, and just a little plug for his podcast, the Trash Compactor, a Star Wars podcast.
Yes.
Um, he talks about how his favorite thing about Star Wars, as it turns out after all this time, is talking about Star Wars. And while I cannot lay the same claim to The Expanse, I will say that I absolutely love talking about The Expanse. My very, very good friend John, he had watched some of the show before I did, and then I think he read the first book before I did, and then I just absolutely surpassed him, like went speeding right by me, on your left. I just couldn't stop reading, couldn't stop watching, and so as he's been reading the books, and he doesn't live in the area, and for a while he travels overseas for work sometimes, but periodically I'll get a text saying, "Hey, you got time to talk?" And and I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And I pick up the phone. He goes, "I just finished the fifth book," and it's like, yes, good. Let's dig it out. Let's dig into it. Let's talk about it. And so even though I can't quite say that my favorite part of The Expanse is talking about it, man, one of my favorite parts of The Expanse is talking about it. So I'm always happy to do it.
no, that's great. Well, we will be. So, audience, if you hopefully you pause this if you haven't seen it, watch the first season, and now have listened to this episode.
Yeah.
So now Joe and I are going to go forward into season 2, and we will be doing another episode on season 2 of The Expanse down the road. So you have time. This is like our built-in TV watching club. So you have
Love it.
And so we should probably wrap this episode up like we always do with recommendations, aside from watching The Expanse, or at least season 1 of The Expanse. Joe, do you have any recommendations for this episode?
I think I mentioned this on the last episode, but I had received my Swamp Thing Bronze Age volume.
Oh, very good.
I've almost read through the whole thing, and I'm reminded so well of how well Len Wein wrote. I think one of the best writers in medium's history. And then, of course, his co-conspirator, Bernie Wrightson, who just passed away recently also. And the issue 7, Night of the Bat, I mean, wow. Next to Neil Adams, Bernie Wrightson's Batman is, I'm looking at the pages right now, absolutely spectacular. So, folks, if you need something to read and something classic, and if you like the Bronze Age, oh, man, read Swamp Thing by Weiner Wrightson. You will not be disappointed.
That's great.
I concur. And it is available on Hoopla.
Yeah,
the entire 500-page book is available on Hoopla, so you can check that out. Chris, you got recommendations for this week?
I do. I have one in particular. I've spoken in the past about how much I enjoy the creative team of Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale, The Long Halloween. For anybody who doesn't know, during The Long Halloween, Catwoman disappears for a stretch and comes back with new information. And there is a book called Catwoman When in Rome, and that covers the story of what Catwoman did while she was out of Gotham. So I just happened to stop in I was waiting to pick up some sushi for dinner, and I stopped in the comic book store across the street because they were slammed, and it was going to take forever for me to get my sushi. And I was like, I'll just look around, and I noticed Catwoman When in Rome on the shelf, and so I picked it up, but I thought I had heard about this, but I never read it. How did that happen? So I corrected it. I think it's terrific. Outside, I love Tim Sale's artwork. I really do. But unless Selena is using her body to try and get something, there are sometimes that he draws her, and I'm just like, come on, man. Her butt doesn't need to be the most prominent thing in there. So outside of a couple of panels of me being like, dude, come on, we're better than this. The storytelling is terrific. The art is wonderful. So Catwoman When in Rome, Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale.
And it's also available on Hoopla. So I will plug that as well.
It is? I didn't realize that. Oh, good.
Yeah, I'm looking it up right now while we're talking.
Oh, good. It's a great little story.
And I guess my recommendation this week is Shang-Chi by Jean Len Yu Yang.
Oh, did you finish getting
Volume
through it?
2? I did. Shang-Chi versus the Marvel Universe. It was great. It was great. This is a recent volume. So Volume 1, it picks up with Shang-Chi overcoming his father and taking command of the 5 Deadly Weapons Society. And this one is Shang-Chi now is the head of the 5 Weapons Society, and he's trying to turn the organization from criminal to legit. And it's 6 issues, and every issue Shang goes up against a Marvel hero. So the first one's Spider-Man, then Captain America, then the FF, then Iron Man, then Thor. So it's well written. The art is fantastic, and it's also on Hoopla, so I recommend it. I recommend Volume 1 too, but Volume 1 was okay, but Volume 2 is a lot, I think, more fun in terms of its writing. So,
Great.
yeah, thank you. Thank you, Joe, for being on this episode.
You're quite welcome. James.
And Chris, obviously, thank you, our Expanse expert and master here.
I don't know about that, but I thank you for the opportunity to pretend at it anyway.
Expanding our knowledge on the Expanse, Chris. Thank you.
Joe, that's perfect. That's excellent.
Well, I think we just found the name of this episode.
Yes, that's it. We named the episode. And thank you to the listening audience. As always, if you want to interact with us more, give us your opinions and thoughts on this episode or anything else, please find us on the Facebook group, Secret Origins of Mint Condition. If you want to email us, it's secretoriginsmc@gmail.com. And we are on Instagram as well at secretoriginsmc. And if you have time, we really appreciate you leaving a rating or review of the show. It does go a long way to helping us get out into the listening audience. In fact, I'm going to read a listener review right now. So this is from our friend of the show and friend of all things Secret Origins Mint Condition and the store. This is from Arco. He said, talking about comics and pop culture and loving every second of it, that's my dream. These guys sound great together and not only know their stuff, but also help bring back so many great memories for me. Looking forward to hearing more. So thank you, Arco.
That's so sweet. Thank you, Arco.
Yeah, thank you, Arco, for writing that review. So if you would like to hear your review read on the show, please do it wherever you listen to this podcast. We greatly appreciate it. And we will talk to you on the next episode.